Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivashri Gaura Bhakta, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jai. We'll go to page 1. All right. Om Jnana Tamarandasya Dhananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest ignorance,
born in darkness of ignorance,
and my spiritual master opened my eyes
my spiritual master opened my eyes
with the torch of knowledge.
with the torchlight of knowledge.
I offer my respectful obeisance unto him.
I offer my respectful obeisance unto him.
Okay, great. So we're in chapter 9. And we discussed, let's see, how far did we get? 15, 16? Am I correct?
Yes.
We finished 16 last time, is that correct?
No, we are starting
16.
15. Right?
15.
We read the purpose for 14.
Okay, great. All right, I'll start. Okay. We're talking about the Mahatmas, and people who engage in sacrifice. So text 15 says, Jnana yajnana chapyanye yajanto mam upasate ekatvainena ritatvena bahuda vishvato mukam. Others who engage in sacrifice by the cultivation of knowledge worship the Supreme Lord as one without a second, as diverse and many, and in the universal form. Jai. Hare Krishna. So we're just talking about different kinds of people, and we're entering into another segment of chapter 9, where Krishna is to be identified in the different forms of sacrifices and so on. I think we can just read the purport just to get the ball rolling. Can somebody volunteer just to read the first, right down to the bottom of the page, perhaps?
I can do most.
Go ahead.
This verse is a summary of the previous verses. The Lord tells Arjuna that those who are purely in Krishna consciousness and do not know anything other than Krishna are called Mahatma. Yet, there are other persons who are not exactly in the position of Mahatma, but who worship Krishna also in different ways. Some of them have already been described as the distressed, the financially destitute, the inquisitive, and those who are engaged in the cultivation of knowledge. But there are others who are still lower, and these are divided into 3. Number 1, he who worships himself as one with the Supreme Lord. 2, he who concocts some form of the Supreme Lord and worships that. And 3, he who accepts the universal form, the Vishvarupa, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and worships that.
Good. Well, can someone else read the next part?
How
I can read.
Okay, go ahead, Markandeya.
Okay. Out of the above 3, the lowest, those who worship themselves as the Supreme Lord, thinking themselves to be monists, are most predominant. Such people think themselves to be the Supreme Lord, and in this mentality they worship themselves. This is also a type of God worship, for they can understand that they are not a material body, but are actually spiritual soul. At least such a sense is prominent. Generally, the impersonalists worship the Supreme Lord in this way. The second class includes the worshippers of the demigods, those who by imagination consider any form to be the form of the Supreme Lord. And the third class includes those who cannot conceive of anything beyond the manifestation of this material universe. They consider the universe to be the supreme organism or entity and worship that. The universe is also a form of the Lord.
Okay, Hare Krishna. My comments on this would be that stretching the idea of God worship, it really goes beyond what we could sometimes imagine. We've read about the universal form. He appears in chapter 11. He also makes an appearance in the Mahabharata a few times, 10th canto of the Bhagavatam, and 10th canto, 2nd canto, there's a few places where the Virata Rupa is represented. So these are all aspects of God, and if you have some kind of reference towards them, you're considered, according to this chapter, to be, let's say, you count. You are, let's say, acknowledged on some level, but these other forms of worship, the three that are mentioned here, are somewhat discouraged. When, as the Bhagavad Gita teaches very simply, Krishna is one without a second. There is no truth superior to me. Everything rests upon me as pearls are strung on a thread. And why make things complicated? It's just that some people have desires, motives, and agenda, and that's why they arrive at different kinds of conclusions. But one of the reasons why we are studying the Bhagavad Gita is to go for the Param Dhamma, to go to the highest level of what we consider the creation, and also the highest level of God, that is Bhagawan, the Bhagawan feature, as opposed to others. Yeah, Brahman is discouraged. Even the universal form, we may respect it, but it's to the source that we are interested. Those are my own comments on this, and I think we can just move along. Okay, good. Text 16. Who would like to read that verse?
I can do it, Maharaj.
Maharaj, I got one question here, Maharaj.
Okay.
What is the difference between the inquisitive who and those who are engaged in the cultivation of knowledge?
Can you give me the first part of your question? I couldn't make that out. And just say it again, please.
What is the difference between the persons who are inquisitive and the persons, those who are engaged in the cultivation of knowledge?
Oh, I see. Okay. So as in chapter 7, we were hearing about how there's 4 kinds of people that submit to Krishna. And we were talking about the distressed, Arator Jignasar Aratarati, Gyanicha Bharatarshava. Those are in distress, those are inquisitive, those are in financial need. And finally, there are those who are actually, let's say, understand that I am small, the world is great, I should show reverence towards the great, I should surrender. So those who surrender out of knowledge, naturally they're more evolved. They've got more, let's say, greater realization, as opposed to those who are in distress. Because people in distress that go to God, they pray, and once the distress is relieved, eradicated, they said, okay, I called God when I needed him. Now, it's kind of like when you call the roofer. You never bother calling the roofer when there's no leaks, but when suddenly there's a storm and, bloop, bloop, some droplets are coming through, then, suddenly the roofer is like God to you. So that's the way some people treat God. Only when there's a need, when they're stressed out, then they go down on their knees. So that's not very intelligent. The intelligent people are those who appreciate that I am a tiny little entity here, and there is a greater power, and it's natural for me to show reverence and respect. So that person usually doesn't lose a grip on service to the Supreme. Whereas a person who's in distress, once the distress is lifted, then one thinks, what was I doing? What was I thinking? You know, surrendering to God, submitting, praying. What was I? That's ridiculous. That's crazy. I'm doing okay right now. So such persons who are in distress, they may get complacent, you know, they might get lazy, lackadaisical. And that's why sometimes they're not considered so advanced, okay? People pray when there's problems, when the problem is gone, that I don't need to pray anymore until the next calamity comes around, you know? Yeah. So that's the difference between these. And there are 4 different kinds of people. That's mentioned in the 7th chapter of the Gita. 4 different kinds of people that surrender to Krishna. There are 4 kinds that do not surrender to the Supreme. Okay?
Thank you, Maharaj.
Thank you.
Yeah, text 16 then.
Sure, I'll read it.
Okay.
But it is I who am the ritual, I the sacrifice, the offering to the ancestors, the healing herbs, the transcendental chant. I am the butter and the fire and the offering.
Okay, there are more, let's say, ways to identify with God. There is a whole culture that worships God as the, like when we say we do a havan, and that means that butter is offered and into the fire, butter or what we call ghee to the fire god, and that is non-different from the Lord. Prabhupada has explained to us many times when he does the fire ceremony, the fire is the tongue of Vishnu. So here you can see God is consuming. If you have a doubt that God eats, well, now it can be seen, you know, like in a practical way. When you offer items to the fire, you can say, oh, this God is consuming. So that fire is non-different from God. The other items mentioned here, the sacrifice itself is God. Any offerings to ancestors, showing good protocol, the healing herb. Everybody knows the story of Hanuman, how he went for the healing herb, grabbed a whole mountain from the Himalayas. They couldn't quite remember which one was the herb that would cure Lakshman from the fatal arrow that came into his side. And so other examples, the transcendental chant, all these are supposed to be non-different from the Lord. How many times have we heard that about the mantra? The mantra is God. Hallowed be thy name. Okay. I think with Easter around the corner, some people will be saying the Lord's Prayer. I looked it up. There's 2.5 billion Christian people on the planet, and some of them will be saying this prayer, hallowed be thy name. So God is in the name. And these are different ways of looking at the absolute. And we're going to go for the next verse and also appreciate how God is to be identified in other shapes and forms. Now, we are members of the Krishna consciousness movement. We are supposed to be conscious of the all attractive one, Krishna, and in different ways and shapes and forms. So here's some examples. You know, if you have a problem with the deity or the deity is far away, then at least you can see God through these different manifestations. But take note also that We don't always have a healing herb around us, and we don't always we're not always set up to worship the ancestors. And anyone who's a ISKCON devotee probably has a pat of butter hanging around. And so, when you look at these items, think of Krishna. This is not different from him, especially if they're to be used in his service. There's one verse that we had covered going back. Paramarpanam Brahmahavir Brahmagnai Brahmanai Hutam Brahmaivatina Gandavyam Brahma Karma Samadhina. Some of you were actually memorizing that verse. And in this shloka, somebody can look it up on the index, Paramarpanam, that when you have an object and you want to offer it in sacrifice to Krishna, Krishna is Brahman. The object is Brahman also, and the consummation is Brahman. Or even the person who is offering is Brahman. Brahman means spirit. So in this way, we are encouraged to see spirit in all the things that we do, especially when we direct our heart toward the lotus feet of Krishna. Then indeed it is Brahman. It's a practice of Brahman. It's a practice of spirituality. Okay, so text 17. Let's someone else who didn't have the great opportunity to read yet.
Go ahead.
Yes.
I am the father of this universe, the mother, the support, and the grandsire. I am the object of knowledge, the beautifier, and the syllable Om. I am also the Rig, Sam, and the Sama, and the Yajur Vedas.
Beautiful. Okay, and then the next shloka, since we're on a string of verses that seem to have similarities, let's read the next.
I am the goal, the sustainer, the master, the witness, the abode, the refuge, and the most dear friend. I am the creation and the annihilation, the basis of everything, the resting place, and the eternal seed.
Great. Any comments there? Questions? Okay, and the next verse 19 helps us to appreciate that Krishna is the one who's providing and that he's the source of all. Can I get another person to read? Go to Chandra, I see you there. Would you like to read that one?
Certainly. O Arjuna, I give heat, and I withhold and send forth the rain. I am immortality, and I'm also death personified. Both spirit and matter are in me.
I'm sorry. Is everyone still with me? Everyone's still with me? Okay, someone was trying to call in. And I keep trying to put on, when I press do not disturb, then I forget about it. And then people are desperately trying to get a hold of me for a few hours. Oh, I forgot to undo the do not disturb. So, all right. So when you look at all these verses and how Krishna is to be identified, you can almost say, well, what isn't Krishna? Where do we not find him? And that's basically the truth. We couldn't have an answer. He is everywhere. That is the Siddhanta ultimately. But Krishna does identify himself in certain places more than others. And so, and hence we have these verses, okay? I am heat. Everybody can appreciate heat, but not too much heat, right? Not too much. Easy does it, And I bring forth the rain. What good is rain? Rain, would you like to tell us about? yourself.
How
What's good? What does the rain do for the world?
It nurtures, cleans, waters to help things grow,
Mhm,
basically.
mhm. Beautiful. So creates a regeneration of things, and yeah, good. We couldn't do without it, and isn't it? And this April showers bring May flowers, yeah? And that's not an April Fool's joke. That's happening. Yeah? The rain is coming, and I'm immortality, and I'm also death personified. These are like two opposites, you can say, isn't it? That mrityu means death, and God comes in the form of death. And death isn't always a bad thing. It means sleep. Also means end of a chapter, new chapter begins. It's an exciting time. And when we take on what we call death, it simply means I have a new opportunity. It's like the rejection of old garments and ready to put on fresh new garments. To any of you must have got very excited. I don't get very excited these days. I just wear the same old, usual clothes. But I think people who have options, they're into the wardrobe, they get pretty excited and they see if something fits. They look at themselves in the mirror in the shop. That is, if you can do that. We haven't been able to do that for a while. And yeah, it's a nice feeling. There's a new me, merely by the clothes that you're wearing. Right? And for a devotee doesn't necessarily have to rely on new garments, but does depend on something that we call H2O. And after taking a shower, you just feel like, I've shed something, the mode of ignorance, and now I'm taking on a whole new physicality. I feel good. James Brown. Okay. I feel good. All right. So both spirit and matter are in me. Let's not forget that within the dirt, within the air, Krishna is there. Even it comes a little forceful sometimes. It's forceful, it's strong and powerful because Krishna is behind it. And sometimes he makes the weather very moderate for us, for our pleasure. But usually it doesn't happen that way. So either a little bit too extreme this way or too extreme that way. It's never just right. Okay, text number 20 then.
So Maharaj, I have a question.
Sure.
Krishna Maharaj. So when, say, someone gets, she's living very nicely, suddenly some illness comes, they're fearful, there's a fear that comes in as to why I'm going to die now, what will I do? I have so much property, whom will I give, what to do? Have so much attachment. So how do you manage that?
How do you manage that? Manage it. Just by accepting that it's not mine. It's not, finally it's coming to the point of fruition, with your intelligence. Hey, I thought it was mine, but now when I die, I'm not going to have it forever. So we don't realize that until the final death knell comes in. So how do you deal with it? You accept it. It's acceptance.
Accept it, yeah. That's a good thing. Accept it.
Resist means you're not surrendering. Resist means that you have false proprietorship and you feel that it's your property. So even if you give it, let your kids inherit it, it's slipping out of your hands. You might be happy that your kids are taking it over. But there's always the worry that, well, they really look after the ranch when I'm gone, And oftentimes they don't. They don't, because you worked so hard maybe to acquire it, and then because it was handed to them, it just gets kind of, let's say, taken advantage of. So how do we accept, the prospect of death? Accept it. Just say, hey, it's coming. die with dignity or die like a fool. Do you want to be a fool? And that just means you're being cruel to yourself. So simply appreciate that I'm not the proprietor, and that to achieve peace in life, I must acknowledge the true possessor of all that be, and stop the false proprietorship. This is mine, so on like that. That's why wars are there. Wars are created, bloody messes are invoked by people having false proprietorship over territory.
Yep.
It's because of territory. So this is my house. This is my car. How dare you? How dare you look at it? Like some people are so possessive. They have that mood, right? How dare you even look at my place? How dare you look at my car?
Yeah.
It's not yours, They're not your flowers. You didn't make any flowers. You maybe landscaping. Someone did. Maybe you did some landscaping. You have some prowess there, but ultimately you have to say goodbye to all these things. So how to deal with it? Accept it, and let it not just be theoretical. They said, well, yeah, that's true. I come here and I inherit something and then I'm gone. But really try to feel it as well, that it really isn't mine. Everything that's there belongs to the universe, which belongs to the Lord. So just accept it. Otherwise,
Correct. Yeah.
You got to let go. When the beautiful thing about getting older and mature is that, hey, I don't have control over my body anymore. I used to be a handsome devil or a ravishing beauty, and it's not there anymore. I don't have the energy. It's not there. It's gone. So, a very mature acceptance of letting go is what's going to make life easier for you. So let go. Now with this COVID, does anybody ever tell you, oh, some people get sick, some people will die. Oh, well, we're not these bodies after all. And, this world that we live in, it really isn't mine. And we will just die and take another birth. So don't worry so much about it, man? So does anybody ever talk like that? No, nobody ever does. It says, oh, you have to live. You have to live because you were born. And therefore you have to die. And everything in between birth and death is just something that you have to jam pack with some fun. I have a divine right to have fun. Oh, do you really? Do you really have some? Are you a? It's a privilege more than anything. If you're having some fun, consider it a privilege. I just went for COVID testing this afternoon, and I just saw so many grumpy people. Two guys were almost having a fight. Said, you're parking in front of my shop. Says, well, I'm parking in front of this person's shop, but it's partially on my property. I said, well, what's it to you? And just like fighting like little kids, These are grown men. And they just took offense because they're identifying with the body, the ego. You hurt my feelings, so I'm going to hurt your feelings. Tit for tat, Let's, cowardly lion. Put him up, put him up, put him up. I was just shaking my head and says, really, guys, the sun is shining, the air is clean, consider yourselves lucky you don't have COVID, Why don't you guys celebrate instead of have argumentation, confrontation? Training is not there. Go ahead.
Okay, on that note, you come across people sometimes. I come across people who accepted the birth and death, but the whole thing is having fun in between. They have accepted that birth and death as a natural thing. How do you share your knowledge to people like that? How do you convince them otherwise?
I think it's all right. It's fair to say, well, sure, you can have some fun, but you really have to balance it with a little bit of a personal austerity and discipline in life. Just don't think that it comes free, that fun comes free. You have to work for it. You have to prove yourself that you earn it. And I think that that's probably a good way to go. I mean, it's kind of like fresh to people's ears. Really? Is that really? I've never heard of that before. Because we are in the age of sense gratification. Since kids, toddlers are young, they're kind of pretty much given everything they want. So I think we should tell people honestly, yeah, you're entitled to have some fun, but what about the other side of it? What about the other side of it? Why don't we should actually try to enjoy the hardship that it takes to get some of that pleasure that comes our way. Earn your happy points, earn them through some labor, through what we call tapasya, and enjoy that. So I don't think it's fair or honest to say there's no fun in this world. Shastra sometimes goes quite deep that way. There is no fun in this world. And Prabhupada, in a letter to Mukunda Maharaj, he was saying that the body is a temple of diseases. It's also a temple of fun, right? I mean, after I saw those two guys fighting with each other, I thought, oh my God, what an illusion people live in this world. For a short period in their life, they have, Cupid comes and hits them, Kamadev comes, and they live in like a dreamlike state for some time. And then after that, a commitment is made, which they should make. Then it's kind of downhill from there. It's like, where's all the happiness gone? So happiness, we're entitled to that. We just 1 second, okay? Yes, I'm fine. So let people know, yes, you can have some fun, but can I offer you where the real fun is? The real fun is when you have a spiritual center in your life, when you come in touch with the reality, the real you, gain the true identity of yourself. Then happiness can be achieved. And where there's happiness, there's peace. So the problem is people are not very peaceful, and they're just thinking the goal of life is just to have a lot of fun and just to exploit the material nature. All right, let's go on to the next. Any other questions on those? O Arjuna, I give heat and I withhold and send forth the rain. I'm immortality and also death personified. Both spirit and matter are in me. A lot is said there. So then text 20. Anybody?
Those who study the Vedas and drink the Soma juice, seeking the heavenly planets, worship me indirectly. Purified of sinful reactions, they take birth on the pious heavenly planet of Indra, where they enjoy godly delights.
Okay, so okay, so here we are talking largely about karma kanda section of the Vedas, having a bit of a good time. So the Vedas do offer it, they're not denying it. But in the long term, we are encouraged to see that happiness goes a little deeper. So you're entitled to have this soma rasa. Okay, fantastic. It's there in the heavenly worlds, but there's nothing that beats some Gopinath Kir, right? There's nothing that beats nice prashadam, prepared with love and devotion. That's where it's really at. Yes, there's nothing like a pancake with Canadian maple syrup drenched all over it, right? All right, good. Yeah, so we're talking about the heavenly planets to some degree here now. Okay, back and forth. This is where Krishna keeps bringing Arjuna to this point in principle, because most people in the Vedic culture, even to this day, have some interest there. They have motives, and very strong motives. And we've seen it in the devotees as well. Smart investments. Instead of trying to think how we can all live together in one block and be like a community, a family, says, I'm just going to go and I'm not going to bother with anybody else. I will just get a nice big monster home. And I figure that in a few days, we'll sit on the property, we'll be able to sell it and make $250,000, or, that kind of calculation goes on. It's very strong in the community. And maybe you're allowed to do that. But at some point in time, we say, hey, wake up. Jeev Jago, you're hitting 50. You don't need it anymore. All those going up all those stairs, anyways, your monster home. So, well, get an elevator. Okay. Well, the real elevator is just like that, going to the heavenly planets. In 1975, Prabhupada was talking to the devotees in Detroit about Ravana making a tower to heaven, a stairway to heaven, and he wasn't successful. He said that right in the Detroit temple. I remember Ambarish being there, so like that. Anyways, everybody knows the famous song, Stairway to Heaven, right? Any musician would know that one. Stairway to Heaven. I see some smiles. And those who don't know what I'm talking about, they will then look it up after this call. The Stairway to Heaven. Anybody who learns some strings on guitar has learned that, And now if you get a chance to look at the lyrics, it's very interesting. I'm sure that when those lyrics were written, those guys were on drugs. But there's some references to the person playing the flute, and going up into the heavenly worlds, and that it is, let's say, not fulfilling in the end. Good. So look at the lyrics, see if you can make any sense to it. The song "Stairway to Heaven." All right. So what else can we? Next person.
Well, Maharaj, can I make a question?
Yes.
Regarding this verse, I remember I have a question. For example, what do we have to do to tell Krishna that we don't want to go to heavenly planets? Because we are making, I think we are making many pious activities, and I remember a devotee telling about the time when Bhaktimarga Swami Maharaj was leaving the body, and he said, please, Krishna, don't let me go to heavenly planets.
Yes, well, those are proper sentiments. Being in the heavenly planets is a kind of waste of time. It's a great delay in time. Time is precious, and you can enjoy physically so much. That's what the heavens are all about. But then you have to learn the lesson that, hey, this is not the parangatim. The ultimate goal in life is not just to have tantalize the body. It's got to be more than that. So I think most of us have experience in this world of what it means to have some stimulation for the body. And we always get disappointed. So really, is that all there is? That's not very deep. The pleasure doesn't go very deep. It's on skin level, very, very thin. So from experience, we should have enough ammunition to realize that I don't want to go this route. I really don't want to take up this path of delay and procrastination. Let me get on with it. Let me get on with straight bhakti. If I do that, I will have some pleasure. I will hear some good music. I will have my cheesecake that is offered to Krishna. I will have some nice people to be with, and there's some good music. And so just by dint of the experience, we should take the direct route. Just look at up 9:2. Once again, look up chapter 9, text 2, and where Krishna's, you just have to look at that. Let's all zip over there. We did it just a couple of weeks ago, or 3 weeks ago. Let's see what we're really getting ourselves involved in with this knowledge that we are, dwelling on. Like, let's get away from this idea of enjoying the heavenly planets. So text 2, this knowledge is the king of education, the most secret of all secrets. It is the purest knowledge, and because it gives direct perception of the self by realization, it is the perfection of religion. It is everlasting, and it is joyfully performed. See, in this verse, it's all capsulized. It's all put into a nutshell of what we are involved in. We're becoming elevated, that educated, and we're involved in a secret that not everybody understands. When you're involved in something that's secretive, it's rather sacred then, it's rather private. It's not to be understood by most people, correct? Like most people can't understand what this chanting does for you. The public doesn't know. And one important pratyakshag bhagyam bhargamam dharmyam susukam karatam abhyam. Pratyaksha bhagamam dharmyam. That is in the third quadrant or the second line. And we're simply saying direct perception. You get joy right on the spot. You're chanting Hare Krishna, put you in the right frame of mind, and right off the bat, right there, you can taste the joy of it all. And the joy is there. Susukam karatam avyayam. Susukam, and that means intense enjoyment. Karatam, activity, and avyam, everlasting. So you compare this kind of cultivation in life from text 2, and compared to what we just went over, drinking somarasa and all these things. There's no comparison, because the pleasures that are derived from sense pleasure have a beginning and they have an end.
Okay.
All right. So let's not get
Yes.
carried away by
Thank you.
the heavenly enjoyments. Let's not get carried away. Because in as much as there's heavenly enjoyment, there's going to be the same amount of toughness. That is demonstrated in the story of the churning of the ocean of milk. The gods are up on top, and then they get usurped by the asuras. The asuras enjoy the heavenly planets, and then they get usurped, they get taken over by the demigods. So it's always a back and forth. It's a very unsteady situation. But if you take the simple process of bhakti, then there's a consistency there. All right. So
Yes, thank you.
yes.
please correct me if I'm wrong. I think I read a letter that Prabhupada wrote after they were assuming that Vishnu Jan Swami passed away, and Prabhupada said something about that he might be in the heavenly planet, but because of his bhakti sukriti, from there he will go. He doesn't have to come back here, but because of that, I don't know, please correct me if I'm wrong, if that's what I read, that there is, if you have bhakti sukriti, but if you don't accomplish the perfection of bhakti from the heavenly planet, you can still go ahead later and reach the spiritual world.
That might be so, Gaura Chandra Prabhu, but you want to take advantage of it. You don't want to say that, okay, Prabhupada said, if I don't make it here, I'm still want some extended sense gratification, I'll go into the heavenly planets because there's a guarantee that I'll come back to this world. I'm back to the spiritual world in the post enjoyment phase. So, we want to be careful about that.
No, I didn't mean that, but there is that opportunity.
That is a possibility. Yeah. That is a possibility. Yeah. Anything is a possibility when it comes to Krishna and your own personal, journey. A special arrangement is made by the Lord. It's a case by case. When you surrender to Krishna, he looks at you as an individual. He takes personal interest in you.
All right.
Maharaj, why Indra is always having, I know many stories are there. He's very jealous. He tries to, do many things so no one takes over his position.
Yeah. Well, that's his personality, right? That's his nature.
His nature. Okay.
That's his absolute nature. He's in the wonderful surroundings always, and he gets really enticed very easily. But it's just like if you have children, you can understand. Say you have 3 kids, right? Each of them are going to be very different from each other. Their individuality will be manifest within a short amount of time. And that's one of the things that parents get preoccupied in, especially mamas. The ladies get together. Oh, Johnny does this, but Jerry will do that. Or Patsy, someone's so smart, but the other one couldn't give a damn about school. Like that's the way they talk all the time, isn't it?
Yeah.
This little kid, one of our little Robbie's, full of energy, is like a skyrocket. You can hardly catch up to him. The other guy's so sedate, so slow. He's always got his glasses on. He's always reading. He's a bookworm, That's within one family, So when it comes to the demigods, of which there's 33 million of them, they're all individuals, and in most cases they're posts. So the problem with Indra is that he's got so much at his disposal, so much enjoyment, that he doesn't want to lose a grip on it. Mm-hmm. And he gets really downright jealous when he sees that a yogi is performing tapasya and gaining a lot of attention and getting a lot of strength, inner strength. That person is ready to take a position of Indra. So therefore Indra's upset. And he usually says, I see a yogi, he's getting to be known, everyone's recognizing him. I'm going to send my best girl off onto him. And the best of the apsaras. The best dancing ladies, the best good looking, everything. Let me break his will. And sometimes he's successful. Sometimes. But anyways, we're not very austere, so we don't fit into that category. I admire these people that can, do these forms of tapasya, whether it's like even what Hiranyakashipu did was pretty remarkable. isn't it?
Yeah.
Pretty amazing. Really amazing. Well, we're almost finished for the day. I wanted to share with you my latest poem. Is that okay? It has to do with noticing a
Yeah.
name. Okay. Okay. It has to do with Hiranyakashipu, of course. Okay, so I'm calling this Big Cat. That's the name of the poem. Okay. Big Cat. He was ferocious, yet not atrocious, bearing a gaping mouth, stretching from north to south, with terrifying jaws and matching claws, effective incisors to imitate or intimidate all misers. He tossed his lofty mane and exposed muscle and vein, releasing a deafening roar, scary to the core. You guessed, it's a lion, invoking fear and a crying. Most amazing, though, is from neck to toe, the body was human, with emotions fuming. He appeared on the scene, challenging a man who's mean, a case of child abuse for which there's no excuse. Our tale begins with a mean man who hails from an evil clan. That's part one. Hiranya was born during a devastating storm. Ill omens could be seen. Conditions were extreme. And as he grew, his ego did too. He wanted to strike a deal with the universe, an appeal to be the most powerful person, in which case the world would worsen. To get some attention, he entered a new dimension, standing on toes, doing yogas. His purpose, most bogus. There, under the strong sun, ants ate his flesh till done. Brahma, the cosmic god, took notice, gave a nod. Hiranya thought, now he's immortal, and made his way to a portal with a transformed body, but intelligence naughty. He became empowered, began attacks like no coward. People cringed and curled in a now shaken world. He conquered every planet, no question of cannot. He eradicated the thoughtful, resurrecting the awful. Said this king of terror, I make no error. That's half of it. You still with me?
Yeah, good thing. Nice, huh?
Okay,
Yeah.
sons he had four, naturally to adore. Hiranya loved them all since they began to crawl. Son Prahlad, from the start, was very good at heart. He kept a major secret, one he'd never forget. When in the womb of mother came a sage, like a brother, he said so explicit, identify as a spirit. And there is a creator, a spirit much greater. This Prahlad kept within. The sharing of this did not begin until he was 5 at school in what is called the Gurukul. He spoke to each classmate, being a simple life advocate. Hiranya then heard a report of sessions not inclined to support. For those wisdom talks held, the boy should be expelled, challenging the authority. This is the wrong priority. Due to Prahlad's spoiling, Hiranya's blood was boiling. Because of this disclosure, the affection was over. This was most intolerable. Punishment was inevitable. Last part. The torture had commenced, in no version condensed. Astonishingly, results were nil. Hiranya just could not kill. Remembering what the sage said, the boy, unharmed, could not be dead. He came out unscathed. The father was simply amazed. How is this possible? And then Prahlad says, by the power unstoppable, present just everywhere, on land, in water, in the air. Tension built up like a thriller. Hiranya pointed to a pillar. Is this power there? Absenteeism, I declare. He struck that pillar like a vicious killer. The pillar shook, was alive. It shattered, and out did arrive a lion man massive, while Prahlad remained passive. With size and sound alone, Hiranya's reality was blown. The lion man hoisted him to his lap, now caught in a trap. Hiranya was indeed a mouse in his very own house. At the portal he did lie, time to say goodbye. His body had diminished. Hiranya's mission finished. And the very last piece. Prahlad did love his dad. He wished him nothing bad. He also adored the big cat, who gave the boy a pat. He was indeed ferocious, but not at all atrocious. Hare Krishna.
Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Very nice.
Hare
Getting ready for
Wonderful.
Siva Jayanti.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
You
Thank
summarize
you.
all in so sweetly. Eh?
Amazing.
Thank you. Thank you.
Very-
Well, anyways, we covered a lot of nice verses today from chapter 9. It is the chapter that is entitled as the confidential knowledge. And there's a lot of good stuff there. So as I made an appeal last week, please understand what is a Mahatma. See if you can learn a verse or two, memorize it. And if you think you've got it, please show up in front of our group and tell us what you can do. Stretch your
Summarize Mahatma.
I'd like to have a question.
Mahatma Nastu Mang Bharuta. Okay, so we'll see you all next week then.
I have a question. One last.
Okay.
How long?
Okay.
How long did it take you to come up with that poem?
Well, I went over a few days, but I just spent a little time each day. Maybe that would have been done in about 6 days, and I'd spend maybe I'd spend like about a half hour to 40 minutes on each day,
Incredible.
something like that. It's absolutely fun. There's nothing better to be done during this pandemic.
There comes another poem.
What's that?
I think it comes natural to you to bring out these.
It might come natural, just like Gaurav Chandra. He plays his sax and it comes so natural to him. It just flows. Everyone's got their that's their creamy butter, that flows. Everyone's got a waterfalls that comes out of their persona, right? Everyone's got a nice waterfalls.
Yes. Very expert in transferring the glory.
Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna.
Well, we missed a few people here. Thank you very much for the devotees from Mississauga and Ottawa, and also from Buenos Aires. And let's see, who am I missing? And of course, Calgary and Tampa. Rain, you're in Tampa, is that right? Tampa, right?
Yes.
And of course, we can't forget Alachua.
Good weather.
Yeah, and Arjuna, who's also in Gainesville. Jai. Okay, see you next week.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah.
Jai Jai.
Bhagavati Maharaj.
Jai Jai.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Anna Maharaj.